Here we go. Wish me luck. Forgive me for the mispronunciations and the weirdness and the constant apology. It's going to happen. So I feel bad. All right, part 5. We're going to talk about Louis Hall's writings. This section gathers a selection of Louis Hall's most influential writings, even though these texts have circulated widely throughout the Warrior Society territory through self-published books, inspired generations of indigenous warriors to take pride in their traditions and to defend their sovereignty. This is the first time they are officially published for a wider audience. The texts here include the Ganesh Manifesto, which was written in 1974 after Mohawk warriors reoccupied an abandoned summer camp near Moss Lake in New York State, declaring it sovereign indigenous territory. The manifesto shares the vision of the people who built the camp to make it a cornerstone for reviving traditional land-based and cooperative indigenous lifestyles beyond the boundaries of the reservations. Written in 1979, while Garan Ganesh was serving a harsh winter in Ganenigan without electricity. The Warrior's Handbook is considered to be his most famous text, staunchly celebrated and uncompromising resistance as necessary for the survival of indigenous peoples and cultures in North America. The booklet originally included pieces which Louis Hall had already published in other outlets, such as the Longhouse News, and some important and the most important ones being included in this book. Finally, Rebuilding the Iroquois Confederacy, published around 1985, shares Louis Hall's understanding of the, quote, peacemaker, Dungananawada's original intention of extending the rafters of the Confederacy, great peace of all nations. It explains how this universal vision has gradually forgotten by the way of Christian and colonial influence and invasion of the recreation of an independent indigenous nation on Turtle Island as a promise for the future generations to enjoy. The Ganesh Manifesto. What's up?
I'm just here for support.
All right, thank you. The Ganesh land of Flint, quote unquote, which is called ancient homeland of the Mohawk Nation, whose descendants with traditional natives from other indigenous nations are moving back to repossess their natural heritage. Other native nations throughout the world have regained their lands and governments. The North American traditions are sure that the government of the United States and its general public shall see the justice and the rights of the indigenous American people making such a move. Ganekin shall be the home of traditional, I can't say that word, it's the color man, are based on the rights accorded everyone else in the world. They use the R word, man, shall exercise his proven government and society in keeping with his culture, customs, and traditions. Based on the rights of the human, he has the right to operate his state with no interference from any foreign nation or government. Here, the people shall live according to the rules of nature. Here, the great law of six nation Iroquois Confederacy shall prevail. The people shall live off the land. The co-op system of economy shall prevail. Instead of people competing with each other, they shall help and cooperate with each other. Here, they shall relearn the superior morality of the ancients. It is not a backward step. The way is a proper moral government, a practical and worthy economic system, and a proper moral human relationship is true progress. What is regarded as progress in this day and age is a road of destruction. Advanced technology abuses nature. The result has been the pollution of air, land, water, and the human mind. A brief reflection reveals how abused nature repays in kind. The competitive society. The main objective of human intelligence should be the peace and happiness of mankind on earth, not the profit saturation of a few tycoons and the worship of advanced technologies. This kind of progress has brought the world to the brink of destruction. Hold on a second. I don't know what's going on in the back of my throat. Let there be a ray of light somewhere. Instead of abuse of nature, let there be an appreciation of nature. Genetchkin calls all Native American indigenous people who wish to live according to their culture, customs, and traditions. Traditional indigenous peoples who answer the call and participate in the project shall be asked to prepare a meet unusual situations. Indigenous lived a million years without money and technology. They lived off the land. Today, existing cooperative communities refuse family allowances, welfare relief, old age pensions, and still live very comfortably. Utilizing the co-op community system, the indigenous state of Genetchkin shall be a moneyless state. What are you doing?
Water.
The requirement is enough land to grow food for all, enough grazing land for beef, cattle, or buffalo, and enough timber land for building materials, and people who are ready to work towards its success. The Mohawk land was lost in the earlier century by fraud, and its possession of New York State and the state of Vermont constitutes illegal usurpation. No deed signed by Joseph Brent and the New York State agents can extinguish the rights of the Mohawk to their own country. Native North Americans not only have the right but are duty bound to correct the wrong committed by Joseph Brant and the New York State agents against the Mohawk Nation. No individual indigenous person or any individual nation of the Six Nation Confederacy has the right to sell or give away land without the consent of the Grand Council of the Six Nation Confederacy. This was one of the findings of New York's Senate investigating commissions, which ended in 1922. Joseph Brant, who was not even a member of the Six Nation Confederacy, having previously disqualified himself, did on March 29th, 1797, with an alleged, quote, power of attorney, end quote, making a deal with the New York State in which he gave away all the Mohawk land to the said New York State. Several months earlier, in November 1796, the same Joseph Brant, with the same power of attorney, quote unquote, gave away large tracts of land in Ontario to his British friends. It was called 990 years leases at no cost. That is, no revenue was to accrue. Bryant loved white people so much or was mesmerized by them that he popularized outright his own people to please his white friends. In a letter to the representatives of the United Nations at San Francisco, California, April 13th, 1945, the Six Nation Confederacy stated strongly that Joseph Bryant was never given the right to give away their lands, even if they had given Brant the alleged, quote, power of attorney, end quote. It would still be invalid, as the deal would have to be consummated in the Grand Council of the Six Nation Confederacy. The fee simple is still vested in the Six Nation, and the Mohawks have the Aboriginal title to ancient Ganekkin. No self-respected nation on earth would accept the dirty deal handed out by Joseph Bryant and the New York State agents. The Mohawk Nation, supported by traditional North American Aboriginal natives from other native nations such as the Ojibwa, Crees, the Algonquins.
It's Ojibwe. It's Ojibwe.
Ojibwe, Crees, Algonquins, and others shall move into the Mohawk homeland of Ganechkin. The combined nations shall establish an independent North American indigenous state of Ganechkin. The great law of peace, which is lately spread all over native North America, shall be the constitution of the independent North indigenous state of Ganechkin. The Mohawk Nation is not breaking away from the Iroquois Confederacy. It is repossessing its homelands with the help of other indigenous traditionals, and at the same time exercising the human rights according to everyone else in the world. Other native nations of Asia and Africa have regained lost land and human rights. The United States restored the Okinawa to Japan. We expect that the United States should see their way to render the same justice to indigenous American indigenous people. To any premise that the Mohawk Project is an internal matter of a white people's government, certain steps are hereby taken, along with pointing out that indigenous nations have long had their own organized governments and societies greatly preceding the people, who have taken up usurpacious authority of this area of the world, and these steps include declaring to the world news of this move on the part of the traditional indigenous of North America. There shall be communications to every nation on earth and to their embassies at the United Nations with the request of foreign relations with the countries contacted, even if only on paper. The indigenous state of Ganechkin was this right is guaranteed by the United Nations, as the same right has been provided to other new nations, which are actually old ones that have likewise formerly been defrauded of their land and governments. The U.S. is a member of the United Nations and swore to uphold its principles. The UN proclaimed its Universal Declaration of Human Rights in December 1948, and it provided Article 15. 1. Everyone has a right to nationality. 2. No one may be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality, nor denied the right to change his nationality. We too are human, and we should have the rights according to everyone else in the world. The right to our nationality, the right to our nation to exist, and the right to the area of the land for our own territory and state where we can exercise our own proven government and society. Notice shall also be sent to the President of the United States and to the governors of the states of New York and Vermont. A request of foreign relations will be submitted to the U.S. government, the procedure being followed to regain the ancient Mohawk homeland to consist in human rights. Nature did not give certificates of possession to people. She co-signed it to certain areas. Ours is the strongest natural legal right known to man, Aboriginal rights. Message to Congress, July 8th, 1970. The first Americans, the indigenous, are the most deprived group in our nation, are on virtually every scale of measurement. Employment, income, education, health, and conditions of the indigenous people ranks at the bottom. This condition is the heritage of the centuries of injustice. The American indigenous
عم هدية كيف
have been
مساعدة
oppressed
بليز
and brutalized,
بعد ما هدية كيف بليز يا عم
deprived of their ancestral lands, and denied the opportunity to control their destinies. President Richard M. Nixon. Ew.
العسكري
Today's white men say that the injustice was done 2 centuries ago, and it was nothing to do with them. The present Mohawk action is in 1974. Will the white men continue to keep justice from the indigenous? The Mohawk Project is the Mohawk Project is the way to real self-determination. Quote, control of our own destiny. End quote. It is the way of the color, they are indigenous race, to regain lost pride, lost belief in humanity, and to offset escapes from reality like alcohol, drugs, and suicides that are destroying the indigenous people. From the preamble to the Law of Great Peace, circa 1450, Onondaga. I am Dangwana Wenda, and with the 5 Nation Confederate Retaner Shona. I place the tree of great peace. Roots have spread out from the tree of great peace. And the name of these roots is the great white roots of peace. If any man or any nation outside of the 5 nations shall show a desire to obey the law of great peace, they may trace the roots to the source, and they shall be welcomed to take shelter beneath the tree. 1945, San Francisco. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, and to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, and to establish conditions under which justice and respect for law can be maintained, do hereby establish the international organization to be known as the United Nations. Now, to be honest, United Nations helps with colonization and stuff. So, in a sense, the United Nations should be dismantled and something else should be made, to be honest with you. NATO, too. NATO is a colonizing effort for the imperialist countries.
Just to clarify, I don't disagree with you.
You don't agree with me?
I don't disagree with you.
Oh, okay. I was like, all right, no worries. But I can understand the appeal to it because it's the law, you know, and they're appealing to make sure that they hold up to their end of the bargain, which they never do. You know what I mean? Like, it's really calling them out. Like, yeah, you say all this shit, but you're not doing it.
They're trying to make them put their, as the statement goes, money where their mouth is.
Yes, exactly. The noblest work of man is to find the formula of peace and happiness for everyone on earth. To that end, the most urgent need of the nation of mankind are proper moral governments and practical economic systems that eliminates poverty and advances human relationship. Down through the ages, the world's wisest men have ever tried to find a formula of peace and happiness for suffering and deprived humanity. We've read the efforts of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and many others. Wise as they were, they all failed in this, mankind's greatest work. Searchers for the formula have consulted the Holy Scriptures for instructions on devising a proper moral government. But the teachers in the great book only spoke of kingdoms, which are total dictatorships, and had no idea of the government of, for, and by the people. As no one has the right to be king or queen, it showed no idea of true proper human relations. Not knowing how to eliminate poverty, the holy teachers advocated poverty, asked starving indigenous in North Ontario reserves of destitute areas if they are happy and at peace. People in the last stages of poverty are repressed and live in absolute misery and wretchedness. The Holy Scriptures laid no claim to have a formula for peace and happiness on earth, only in the afterlife, quote unquote. After you're dead. That's no good. That is no good for people suffering and the tortures of the damned of this life. The East had its own famous wise men, among whom was Confucius. Wise as they were, they could not find a key to peace and happiness, a proper moral government, a practical economic system, and human relationship. It took the North American Guacungangui and Dangan.
You're trying to say their name, but I want to correct you, but I can't. Sorry, I didn't mean to unmute.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Dangananowada to find the formula. He took from natural righteousness, Harwao, and made a code, which he called the Great Law of Peace, known as the Great Law of Peace. I did it most. The wise men of the ages, armed only with the Great Law, conquered the five most fierce nations imaginable in history: the Mohawks and the Oneida,
Oneida,
and the Cayugas, the
Seneca,
the Onondagas.
You're right so far.
Yes, united them in the Confederacy, the Law of Great Peace in Mohawk, put them symbolically in one longhouse and created peace and happiness, and lasted until the white man came with his dark age. The Great Law of Peace was the world's first national constitution and the first international law, the first code of human rights. The Iroquois Confederacy was the world's first people's republic with sovereignty for everyone. All other countries were kingdoms, and in the kingdom, only the monarchs had sovereignty. Everything and everyone belonged to the king. The entire world may thank the peacemaker, Dangana Winda, for whatever rights and freedoms its people enjoy. But not all the rights and freedoms in the Great Law were adopted. The copiers kept full justice for their people. They left loopholes through which they may continue subtly to oppress humanity, as like the 13th Amendment and the discretion against women and children and non-white people. There have been a continuous psychological war waged against indigenous peoples. It's every bit as deadly as the one with guns. The casualties are the drunks, drug addicts, unalivings, renegades, and traitors, all destroyed people. The indigenous are made to feel cheap and inferior, which results in identity conflicts. Most indigenous cannot find work in the white man's mainstream and have to go on welfare relief and are called, quote, welfare bums, end quote, to help them slide down in their self-evaluation. The establishment of the independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshkin offers a positive solution to the problems of indigenous peoples. They get away from the deleterious effects of welfare relief life. They can get away from city slums. They will live in fresh, unpolluted air. They will help build indigenous state. They shall regain privileges. They shall do it themselves. No longer shall the white man's government say indigenous are a burden on their country economy via welfare relief. A well-run cooperative community needs no financial help whatsoever. The white man will no longer be hurt where it hurts the most, in the pocketbook. Wouldn't that alone be an inductive persuasion to the white man to let go of captive indigenous peoples? There may be some broken down, brainwashed indigenous peoples who, because of fear and inferiority complex, shall be afraid to go to Ganeshkanen At first, the vanguard of strong, resolute men and women and children who shall establish the indigenous states of traditionals. They know their rights and are exercising them. The establishment of the indigenous state gives the North American indigenous peoples an international responsibility, a personality, and the right to establish foreign relations with other nations. All the rights mentioned above are guaranteed by the United Nations because the nature of the movement is in international affairs, not in internal matter. The prospective members of the new indigenous state shall be ready for herbal, preventative medicine to keep sickness to a minimum. See Chief Smallboy, Healthy Camp. By following the above, the independent North American state of Ganeshkin shall be free of the white man for the protection of the rights, cultures, customs, and traditions of the indigenous peoples who participate and join in the project. The following is proposed. Articles of agreement by the nations within independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshkan. And we're going to go over it. Hope everybody's doing okay. Doing a little bit of it. All right. Assembled this today on repossessed Mohawk land. Representatives of various North American indigenous nations have come to the agreement with the host Mohawk Nation in matters attending the establishment of the independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshkin. Nations agree to the following. 1. That the host Mohawk Nation is dispossessed of its land by unjust actions on the part of foreign people, and its repression was the result of the joint effort of the above-mentioned indigenous nations whose signature appear below. Therefore, the said North American indigenous nations concerned shall share in equality the benefits, protections, privileges, resources, production, and the government of said independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshkin. 2. That the assembled North American indigenous nations do make, ordain, and publish an alliance that take the pledge on the wampum that they shall forever defend and protect each nation in the alliance of the great law of the Six Nation Iroquois Confederacy, mankind's first and greatest national constitution. 3. That the assembled indigenous nations shall implement the cooperative economic system to run the independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshkin, and that each member nation shall take a certain area to lock its cooperative communities, and that every subject of the said independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshkan is a member of a co-op with the right to an equal share of the production, and to this end, every subject of the said independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshkan shall pledge to do his share of the work to so earn his share of the production. 4. That the assembled indigenous nations shall live off the land, grow food on every available acre, keep livestock, and preserve the environment. 5. That each member nation continues to exercise its own customs and traditional indigenous spiritual ceremonies, and each member nation shall permit the other members to adopt any spiritual ceremonies if they do so desire. Pledge of Alliance. And this is, everybody's got a pledge because it has a blank. It has a blank. All right, here we go. To make sure that the project succeeds in all its phases, it has to be proposed that all traditional indigenous people joining and participating in the project take the pledge of allegiance to the North American indigenous state of Ganeshgan, while holding the strings of sacred pledge wampums in hand. The following words to be used in taking the pledge are hereby suggested. Do you have your wampum belt? I'm just I blank do pledge on the sacred wampum that I shall support, defend, and protect the independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshgan. I accept the great law of the Six Nation Iroquois Confederacy as the Constitution of the independent North indigenous state of Ganeshgan, and do pledge to obey its laws and to defend it to the best of my ability. I do pledge to work in the interest of all the people of the independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshgan, who are engaged in developing the indigenous state into an example of proper moral government and society. I accept the cooperative economic system as a most practical and worthy of the human state, and do pledge to do my full share of the work to help in its success. I pledge to cooperate fully with others who are taking this pledge of allegiance to the end so that the people of the independent North American indigenous state of Ganeshgan may realize fully their human rights and know peace and happiness. Mohawk Camp. This area is part of the land under the legal Aboriginal title of the Mohawk Nation. We Mohawks have returned to our homeland with the help of our other traditional indigenous peoples. We shall make a home of any and all indigenous peoples who wish to live according to their own customs, cultures, and traditions. Native nations all over the world have regained their lands. The U.S. restored Okinawa to Japan. We assume that this rendering of justice shall be extended to American indigenous peoples, and that this land shall be restored to the Mohawks. This camp is out to prove that the traditional indigenous peoples can live off the land without electricity, money, welfare, relief, and aid of any kind. White people are asked to help by not interfering. All we need is to be left alone to live in our own way. Any help from other nations in the form of letters to the U.S. government appealing to its justice and to render the same to the American indigenous peoples, or through pressure by way of United Nations, shall be greatly appreciated. The fact in the above Ganeshgan Manifesto were compiled by Louis Hall. Notes. That was Louis Hall's manifesto. Warrior Handbook. Anything you would like to add at all so far, Two Spirit? If not, that's okay too.
It seems pretty straightforward at the moment. Like I'll get into more in-depth stuff, but that currently was specifically for Ganeshgan.
And Ganeshgan is, I said it right? I said it right? Holy crap.
Some of these places, some of these things you are saying right.
Oh my gosh, are you saying I'm getting better? I'm improving. This is what happens when you like stretch. You tell me, don't tell me.
You've actually almost said it a few times, but you keep changing it up every time you say it. So I'm actually happy because like you'll get close and then you'll change how to say it, and I'm like, okay, you're back off of it again. You're not that close.
All right. Who made you? Or how scientists create the I'm going to say it once, red race, because it's pertinent. Don't say red. Don't refer red to people of the indigenous community. The white man says indigenous people came from Asia by way of the Bering Strait. If they were indigenous peoples, maybe an indigenous being a native of India. Oh, okay. Let me read this. The white man says indigenous people came from Asia by the way of the Bering Strait. If they were indigenous, maybe an Indian, being a native to India. The particular indigenous we're talking about is the, oh my gosh, here we go, Algonquin, okay, hold on, Algonquin Hanui. You know, the Native American. They say the color man crosses over from Asia on the land bridge, or stepping islands, like stepping stones. Our mighty ancestor took mighty strides. The master storyteller says the time of this migration was 12,000 years ago. Since it's a scientific estimation, therefore, it's impressive. They came to this conclusion by, quote, reading the rocks, end quote. Now, you guys, you want to watch out and avoid rocks. They can betray your passage, even if you passed 12,000 years ago. The scientists can even detect, if slightly, our ancient fragrance, which you left behind as you passed the rocks. Another set of scientists, after much reading and smelling of the rocks, said that many moons ago, there was an ice age that lasted about 1 million years, and it covered the North American continent with a sheet of ice 4 miles high, halfway down to Mexico from the Canadian border. They estimated the ice receded 10,000 years ago. If that's so, then simple arithmetic tells us that the ice age had 2,000 years to go, when the scientists say our ancestor crossed the Arctic waste and ice-bound Canada over ice 4 miles thick. Let us envision the ancestors coming over in the rarefied air. A 4-mile high and refrigerated atmosphere, at least 100 below zero, in thermal suits and space helmets, with bottles of oxygen strapped to their back. It was a tremendous trip of thousands of miles. That's Louis Hall humor there, isn't it?
He's making fun of the whole theory.
Yeah. Scientists are resourceful fellows. The first bunch decide to stick to their guns regarding the 12,000 year estimate. They took a leaf from Holy Scriptures, where Moses with his magic wand struck the Red Sea, which thereupon parted and allowed the Israelites to walk through, after which the sea returned and swallowed the Egyptian army, pursuing the Israelites' refugees. The Egyptians protest the story, saying there's nothing in their history which about such an event. The scientists disregard that and have the leader of the future indigenous peoples of possession of an equally magical wand which parted the ice and allowed the wanderers through. The scientists don't say it in quite that way, but they revised the ice picture and have an ice-free valley through which they have our ancestors walking out the Bering Strait theory. We too protested. There's nothing in our history about such an event. As far as we're concerned, our ancestors made their debut in this valley of happiness right here on this land. The Algonquin America was just as the white man originated from Southern Europe, black people in Africa, and Asiatics in Asia. The Bering Strait theory is a tongue-in-cheek propaganda to make the Algonquin Hananui think that they also are aliens in their own land, that the Europeans have just as much right to be in America. The scientists are trying to justify in the white people's mind their presence on indigenous man's land. They use their color. Warrior Handbook, The birth of man is an act of nature. Nature has produced several races of mankind. They all have the right to live. No one has the right to take another person's life except in self-defense. Nature even provided that instinct of self-preservation, so that the person having been born shall defend and protect the life that was given to him. Let's therefore introduce the first law of nature, self-preservation. If anyone is trying to destroy you, stop him. It is our duty. Man also has another life, his national life. His nation also has the right to exist. The members of the nation are duty bound to protect and defend their nation. The world has nations of people. Everyone has a right to a nationality. Man is the social persons. Now, I would say the critique there is white people, white nationalists don't have a right to their nation. I'm sorry. Man is a social person and has a right to belong to his own society. The Algonquin Hawanui are denied this right. The man from Europe wants him to join the white man's society. He calls it assimilation. It is hard to imagine anyone not belonging to a nation. A man's national life is as important as his physical life. Besides having the right to exist, the nation also has a right to an area of land of its territory, there where it may exercise its government, laws, customs, and society. No nation shall be deprived that it has to exist on a reservation. At this moment, July 24th, 1979, only Ganechkin, which is a part of the traditional Mohawk Nation, practices rights to live in a territory. All other indigenous nations exist on reservations. It is a deplorable state of affairs. There is a remedy for it. The situation was caused by people from Europe who somehow prevailed over the natives on reservations while the Europeans developed the country. It was a great mistake for our ancestors to fall for the promises of the Europeans that reservation life would be free from worry, fear, trouble, and poverty, and would pass Ganquin.
It's basically saying Turtle Island.
Okay, cool. But they did and paid for it with their lives and liberty. It is now up to the present generations to make the best of it and to fight and regain areas of their land where they may live in freedom from the great white father. It can be done. There are ways and means. Many Algonquin Hanwi, I'm going to try to keep saying it, are too afraid to fight for their rights. They have been browbeaten into a state of hopelessness. They shall have to be inspired to stand on their hind legs and to fight for their future and for the future of 7 generations ahead. Because you guys always look 7 generations ahead.
Correct. It's called the 7 generations principle.
Yeah, and that's like a bit of a planned thing too. Like you could say that's planned economy in a sense too, but in a different way, because you're planning to make sure that you're making sure that the next generations do get to be part of the great law of peace, basically. Yeah. And again, there are ways and means to turn the meek and humble into courageous and resolute people. When there are those who can fight and are ready to put their nation in its rightful place among the nation of mankind, they are the leaders of the present and the future. To combat oppression, let us take the famous Jewish people as an example of success. For many ages, they were a destitute people. They were hounded from pillar to post. Their leader came up with the 10 Commandments, which he said was given to him by the Creator God. It was recommended that as the way to go to Paleface heaven. The result shall be achieved after one is dead. It is for the afterlife. Our problem is different. We have to achieve a better life here on earth while we are still living to gain their Israel, the Jewish people had to use a different strategy than the Ten Commandments. After more than 30 centuries of praying to Jehovah, they finally got tired of waiting for him and to do their thing. They changed their style. They grabbed the bull by the horns and asserted themselves. They got up and grabbed the land base for themselves. They copied the European grab of the indigenous man's land. They used the color word. Behold, the meek and humble Jewish person suddenly turned tiger, who even killed a lot of Arabic people to set up Israel. It's not the way prescribed by the Ten Commandments. But the Ten Commandments is a good idea. It stood the Jewish in good stead down through the centuries. The following is a warrior's 10 commandments, which the writer did not go up a mountain to get from the Lord, as the white man says his ancestor Moses did, but they were conceived in the mountains of Ganeshkan territory, in the howling wilderness of 50 below zero temperature. The letter lays no claim to a prophet and divinely inspired, or that these Ganeshkan commandments shall lead to any paradise in the afterlife. But they were designed to meet the problems on earth and uncover the secrets of peace and happiness in this earthly life. Certain Mohawks oriented to think like their masters shall not accept this, my Mohawk 10 Commandments. Here we go. Number 1, be brave and fearless. There can be no place on earth for those who are in fear. Be strong. In this hard and cruel world, only the strong may know peace and happiness. To be weak is to invite aggression, oppression, tyranny, misery, and woe. Fight for your rights, for only those who fight for it can achieve human rights and respect. There is a right and wrong way of fighting. To fight. Always propose to fight in a clever way, for he who fights in a clever way is equal to 1,000 men. Maintain a strong national independence and sovereignty under the great law of peace. And let your slogan be peace, righteousness, and power. For not one of these is possible without the other two. Let no power abolish your nation. 5. Maintain your own national initiative, and let no other nation control your destiny. Respect nature's first law of self-preservation and stop any traitor seeking to destroy you and your people. For any nation which ignores which law stands condemned to extinction. 6. Develop a spirit of cooperation so that our nation can rely completely on its own efforts. To become a competitive state is to create tension, strife, panic, frenzy, fear, hate, bigotry, weakness, and division. 7. Think right so that you shall do right and be right. For only the truly justified, justice-minded can achieve peace and happiness for all. Respect the rights of others, that your own rights may be respected, and these rights including the rights of life, to live and to be free, the right to nationality, territory, government, possession, freedom of speech, to think of and believe as one sees fit, to human rights and the pursuit of peace and happiness. 9. Acquire wisdom and knowledge of the world, for only through understanding among all people will misunderstandings and war be eliminated. Let there be no special course of study on the subject of devising a proper moral government that proper people can be trained to operate this very important device to ensure the peace and happiness of mankind, and that its study be included to produce a most worthy economic system to eliminate poverty, misery, and wretchedness. Let only those who pass a most rigid test on the subject of government and economic knowledge to be allowed to run governments and nations. 10. Acquired advanced human relationships. Human birth is an act of nature, and all humanity is equal, subject to nature's law of death. No one has the right of lordship over others. The more able only have the right to help those less able, and appoint leaders of government. Only have right to be the voice and the will of the people, that all may share the bounties of nature and know peace and happiness. The Warrior Society. Doing good on time. The term Warrior Society was supplied by the white man. The Great Law says, quote, the war chief and his men, end quote, as a term of Warrior Society seems to apply very well, as we are using the English language in this confabulation. We shall use the term. The Great Law provides definite functions for the war chief and his men. They are charged with the protection and defense of the people. Their duties take many forms: keeping the peace, teaching, public speaking, repossessing lost lands and human rights, and work for all useful kinds of to promote the welfare of the people. Uphold the Great Law results in peace, righteousness, and power. A noble work entrusts to the care of the Warrior Society. In recent years, girls and women of the Six Nation Confederacy have shown an inclination to participate in action programs such as demonstrations and confrontations. They even made a declaration at the Loon Island takeover in 1970 that at the next war with the white men they would take part and have learned to handle firearms. They took part in the repossession of Stanley Island 2 weeks before at the confrontation with Quebec Provincial Police in Ganhanaquin girls, where their high power rifles. At Moss Lake, they stood firm beside their men. In other demonstrations and confrontations throughout the continent, girls and elder women were much in evidence. This being the case, the Warrior Society is hereby strengthened by the addition of warrior girls. Long live the Warrior Society, the government of the world's wisest man. The most important attributes of man are intelligence, wisdom, and knowledge. The noblest work of man is to find the formula of peace and happiness for everyone on earth. Wise men through the ages have tried to find such a formula. An impressive array of great men where they. There was Socrates, the most famous of them. Wise as he was, he failed to find the formula. His pupil, Plato, also achieved a great renown. His attempts are recorded in his writings. He has tried to form a perfect government and state. His pupil Aristotle, whose theory on law still influences the lawmakers of today, also failed in his mankind's greatest quest the key to peace and happiness. The wise men who wrote the Bible also failed to teach suffering and deprived humanity of how to devise proper moral governments. They spoke only of kingdoms, which are total dictatorship. They had no idea of government of, for, and by the people, nor did the holy teachers advocate an economic system that would eliminate poverty. Not knowing how to eliminate poverty, they advocated poverty. Ask starving indigenous in North Ontario reservations or the people in destitute areas in India if they are happy and at peace. They represent people in the last stages of poverty and live in absolute misery and wretchedness. The Bible's wisest man, King Solomon, had 500 wives. That alone disqualifies him as a wise man, as he was a king and no one had the right to be a king or queen. He showed no idea of truly proper human relationship. He also had poor people in his kingdom. He did not know of an economic system that would eliminate poverty. The Holy Scriptures laid no claim to have a formula of peace and happiness on earth, only in a afterlife, quote unquote, after you're dead. That's no good for people suffering and the tortures of the demands in this life. The East had its own famous wise men, among whom was the noted Confucius. Wise as they were, they too could not find the key to peace and happiness on earth. A proper moral government, a practical economic system, and human relationship. It took the North American Algonquin Hananui, Dangankanan Wanda to find the formula. He took from natural righteousness the I can't say it. That made a code which we call the law of great peace, known as the law of great peace and the great law. The wise men of the ages, armed only with the great law, conquered the 5 most fierce nations imaginable in history: the Mohawks, the Owadas, the Cayugas.
It's Mohawk, Onondaga, the Cayugas, the Seneca, and the Oneida.
Okay. It says 1, so it's Oneida. My bad. I say 1 because it looks like Owen. My fault. Unite them in the Confederacy. The Haudenosaunee in the Mohawk language, which was spoken by the Iroquois nation at one time, put them symbolically in one's longhouse and created peace and happiness that lasted until the white man came fresh from the Dark Ages. The Iroquois Confederacy became a powerful state and established a protectorate of 28 indigenous nations. The Law of Great Peace was the world's first national constitution, the first international law, the first code of human rights. The Iroquois Confederacy was the world's first people's republic with sovereignty for everyone. All other countries were kingdoms, and in a kingdom, only the monarchs had sovereignty. Everything and everyone belonged to the king. The entire world may think the peacemaker Dangananawanda for whatever rights and freedom its people enjoy, but not all the rights and freedom in the Great Law were adopted. The United States of America was the first to borrow from the Great Law of Peace to devise its constitution, and the rights and freedoms adopted became loopholes through which humanity could continue to be oppressed. International law has provisions which are definitely Iroquoian. The language of the nations of the 1920s was inspired by the old Iroquois leagues of 6 nations. The present-day United Nation, organized to bring peace to all nations and abolish the scourges of war, was patterned along the same lines. This world in 1950 made a special study of the Longhouse with the objective incorporating Iroquois principles into its deliberations. Long live the great law of peace. Long live the memories of the peacemaker, Dangananwada, wisest moral of the ages. Psychological warfare. The Europeans waged military wars against indigenous peoples and made the indigenous people fight against each other, including the Iroquois protectorate nations to attack their protectors. The Iroquois Confederacy. The European holy men are proud to admit they started that one. It took a quarter of a century of urging the cajoling I'm gonna make sure I know this word. Let me go look up this word, everybody. No, not that one. Come on. I'll be right back. Cajoling, and that means effects. Cajoling means, oops, persuading someone to do something by sustaining, coaxing, or flattery. So manipulation. Like all it.
Yep. It's another word for manipulation.
Yeah. Boop. Back to there. Come on. There we go. All right. But the men of God are persistent fellows. The missionaries kept at the Protractorate nations, appealing to their fighting spirits, especially to the youth who were most apt to do the fighting, with promises of military assistance from the French, Hurons, and Algonquins. The purpose of starting such a war was to destroy the great Iroquois Confederacy so as to make possible the quest of the entire continent by the French. The Ganache on the Haudenosaunee, I think, was in the way. It had to go. Naturally, the holy men had no idea that the war they started would last about 150 bloody years, at the end of which time all the Protractorate indigenous nations would be extinct, and the French would have lost their land possessions in America. The Six Nations were still on their feet, reduced in numbers, but still fighting. They just had to be the toughest people on earth. In fact, a thousand Six Nation warriors, with a little help from the British, as usual, beat 9,000 French at Quebec City in 1759. Want to hear about that, boys and girls? It is this way. Twisted history tries to say that there were no Six Nations in Quebec. Documents and archives say they were. Also, if it hadn't been for the Six Nation, there was no way for the 4,000 English to beat 9,000 French in an open field, European style, when said English had beaten the French in 150 years. According to the documents, the English had noted the extreme fear that French had developed of Iroquois. This was caused mainly by the parents who cautioned their children to behave as less Iroquois will get you. It's LES though. The French
it's saying or unless the Iroquois. They're basically saying that the French taught that if they didn't behave, the Iroquois would they made us into like a horror movie character. If you didn't behave, the Iroquois would come get you in the night.
Oh, the boogeyman type thing. I got it. The French youth grew up with a great fear of the Iroquois. The British used this to their advantage on several occasions, especially at the siege of Fort Louisbourg, when they threatened to turn all prisoners over to the Iroquois if the fort did not surrender. It did. At Quebec City, the English and the French lines marched towards each other, with the Iroquois right behind the English, out of sight. At a single, the British executed a maneuver which opened holes in their line through which rushed the terrifying Iroquois with terrific yells and war whoops. The English added to the din with their own yells. Imagine the consternation of the poor French soldiers. One moment there were British soldiers marching against them, greatly outnumbered by the French, who for a long time always wiped them out. They felt secure indeed. Suddenly the British had turned into a ferocious, howling Iroquois plunging down upon them. The sudden appearance of their dreaded foe was shocking, and fear took over. The poor fellows dropped their guns so they could flee the faster. The battle, quote unquote, took 20 minutes. Mopping up operations in the city took the rest of the day. Les Iroquois were... Am I allowed to say that?
It's in the book. You can just say it.
Yeah. Were recognized as the greatest guerrilla fighters on Earth. On the war path, they were none more ferocious. At this point, let's stop and pat ourselves on the back. After all, that's our grandfathers we're discussing. Fighting which preceded the fall of Quebec, in which 4 strategic French forts were taken, was mainly done by the Six Nation warriors, with token help from the British, who were as afraid of the French as the French were of the Iroquois. The motive of the British for taking all the credit was to get around the Treaty of Alliance made with the Six Nation Confederacy, a joint military conquest by partners of an alliance, which would mean splitting up the conquered land between the partners. British wanted all the land. The indigenous had no lawyers to argue the point. The British played the unintelligent luck from start to finish. Of course they did. They pretended like, oh, right?
They're like, oh yeah, we don't want the land. Why would we want that? And then all of a sudden, right when we got it for them, they're like, oh no, we want the land now.
Yeah. There is another type of warfare waged on the natives, Algonquin Honani. Ever since the white man hit this continent, it was waged against the minds of natives. This type of warfare is every bit as dirty and deadly as the ones with guns. The casualties are the drunks, the addicts, and people that are self-unalive. The casualty rates is high. There are indigenous people walking around dazed and confused, suffering from identity conflicts. See, and this is what whiteness and white settlerism does to people that can't assimilate into whiteness. It gives you this false hope of, just assimilate, just be one of us. And then it's like, oh, no, you're not white enough. And you know what? We're going to keep you subjugated because you know what? We benefit from this. You know what I mean? We project our superiority on you to de-develop you as a human. You know, individually, we'll de-develop you, and as a society, we'll develop your whole society.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. This is one of the wars of modern 1979. Warriors have to fight. To fight any kind of war, one needs courage, gumption, knowledge of the enemy, and strategic planning. The biggest single requirement is that people with fighting spirits, not because casualties of psychological warfare. How does one acquire fighting spirit? Only 10% of any population shall fight for their rights. How can you develop fighting spirit in the other 90%? Our ancestors discovered the secret long ago. All their men were great warriors, 100%. How did they do it? Were they naturally all great warriors, or were they developed? They must have been developed, because at present, we who have inherited their blood are also heirs to the 10% population fighting spirit. One mentioned that has come to us is the war dance. Our ancestors brought up the spirit of the people with the war dance, even those who did not dance. The Iroquois war dance is a great performance. It is even used as medicine. Since it works, it should be performed at every opportunity. The Iroquois say that the Sioux invented the war dance, and it was called wasasi, the name in which they knew the Sioux. The dance spread all over America. After the people became quote-unquote civilized and Christian, the war dance fell into disuse. The time ambled on. Many Algonquin Hononi, which is the Haudenosaunee, dropped out of Christianity, went back to their own customs and beliefs, and became known as traditionals. They revived many ceremonies and customs long forgotten. One of these is the war dance. Many elders among the traditional frown upon the performance of the war dance. They point out that there is no war, that the indigenous people shouldn't go to war at any event, as their land had been seized by foreigners from Europe. What you guys are? I would agree to the fact that you are in constant war, just existing underneath settler colonialism. You're in constant war.
Correct.
What would they be fighting for? While this seems logical and moral, it's only half true. The elders are so tough. They don't realize there is a war being waged against the indigenous peoples and its effect in racism and oppression running rampant in indigenous America. The present day Mohawk traditionals are fond of spirited indigenous dances, especially the war dance. 10 years ago, Mohawk girls took part in the war dance at social dances. Did you I understand that you had your huge thing with being part of the residential schools. You probably can't tell me, but when you got out of that, did you utilize these types of medicine to help heal yourself?
Yeah. Yes, they're called
ceremonies. Okay. Because I can see how it can heal yourself, because one of the things they say about people that have anxiety, especially, is a pushing mechanism, like an actual physicalness helps with anxiety. So I can see how something physical like that in one aspect helps with that and brings you to harmony. Because I bet there's some breathing techniques as you dance and stuff, and you're in a certain headspace and stuff like that. I'm assuming, that really brings it in locks.
It does. And then on top of that, the music and the rhythm and everything else helps too.
Yeah, I kind of thought so. And that's materialistic, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because you see it, you hear it, you feel it. You know what I mean? It occurs the wrath of many elders, chiefs, and clan mothers. War was men's business. The girls countered that by pointing out that in the future conflicts and struggles, they shall take part in the fighting with guns. So they have the right to take part in the war dance. Fucking power to the women, for sure. The elders prevailed, and for some years the war dance was again in disuse. The Ganechkin happened. One of the rules to take part in that land repossession was that each participant be armed, men, women, and children. All were given lessons in gun classes and in shooting. During the occupation of Moss Lake, some vigilantes started shooting into the camp. When the indigenous fired back, 2 white people were hit. The district attorney of Hickram County took out a search warrant to be served by 300 well-armed state troopers with orders to disarm the Warrior Society and to look for evidence. The federal mediator came to the gate and stated that he was able to arrange a safe conduct out of the camp for the women and children. The women decided in their meeting to stand by their men and fight it out. Here, their prediction came true. Girls had become warrior girls. They were now equal partners in the armed camp. They now, in reality, had the right to take part in the war dance. The district attorney withdrew his search warrant. They had spies in the camp who reported the numbers of fighting men and women, and their high moral and even eagerness for the coming action. During the Iroquois war dance, the dancers let down their hair, relax, and let themselves go. They dance with abandon. They dance with abandon. They yell.
It's basically dance with abandonment, so no care.
Don't care. Okay. They yell and whoop. All their hang-ups, ambitions, and fears are washed away. Helps the young and old. It's a psychological dance. Let's use this mighty preventative in our fight against the psychological war raged against us. Let let's all do the war dance tonight. Let's shatter the night with our wild yells, our war whoops, with female yells and equal volume. Let's permit our fighting spirit to soar once again. Thank you, O great Sioux nation, for inventing the war dance. Thank you, O great Iroquois ancestors, for making the war dance exciting, wild, and beautiful. This thing called peace. Most important thing in the world are peace and happiness. Their requisites are food, shelter, clothing, temperate zones, not needed in the tropics, proper human relationships, order, peacekeeping, and economic systems which eliminates poverty. One is not at peace when one is not happy. There are those who are happy when they are not at peace. These are the oppressors and the war profiteers. They have no use for peace. People all over the world are concerned about the elusiveness of peace. There are many promoters of peace. They urge all people to follow them in the ways of peace. There are thousands of religions which proclaim peace. They have followers. Some of the great religions have hundreds of millions of followers. In spite of all the peacemaking, there is a singular lack of peace in the world. There are those who walk in peace in the world. There are those who walk of peace and make profit in billions out of war and other kinds of strife. There is a universal cry for peace, but not everyone in the world is interested in peace. Not all will follow the promoters of peace. It would seem that nature creates certain peaceful people and others who will be rapacious and ravenous. They shall prey on their fellow men and study the nature revealed that all humans are born greedy, but many grow out of it. What makes it hard to grow out of greedy nature is the white man's culture of possession, centered around what he has, what he can get, and means by which to get it. All his institutions, from education to government, are based on possession. Indigenous culture is known as the culture of the human. The ancient, they use the R word, man, sought to glorify the humans physically, mentally, and morally. There was no competition in this culture, which made its advancements in technology very slow. The competition in the white man's culture is frenzied, even panicked, while it has made it possible for the white man to make great advances in technology, makes peace impossible. The culture of possession makes greed impulsive. The culture of the human makes the Algonquin Honawi receptive to peace overtures. It also makes them easy victims of tricky practitioners of the culture of possession. The Haudenosaunee respond instinctively to peace proposals. They are a pushover to the peace promoter, bona fide or rogue. The clue to the solution of the problem of peace is right here. The Haudenosaunee want peace. To make anyone do what you want them to do, you have to make them want to do it. The idea is to make a unpeaceful want peace. This almost makes me feel like I'm saying contradiction when I read on contradiction. Since so many white people also want peace, the work is comparatively, quote, simplified. You now have to go after those who do not want peace. The problem is they don't need peace. They have the, quote, free world by the tail. For them, it is not profitable to have peace. And the thing to do is to make them want peace. Simple. Sees you. To billions of others, it is a mystery, but to you, it is as clear as glass. There are those who advise us that the only way to achieve peace is by peaceful means, to approach the peace destroyers with the words dripping with honey and show them the errors of their ways. In ancient sweat, tell them that profits are not everything. It is more profitable to have peace than to have huge profits, disregarding the fact that it's huge profits that make them happy. It's their unhappiness they're concerned about, not ours. Indigenous people have been using this method for the last 2 centuries. Despite the sweet approach, they've been losing more land, rights, and people. Yes, many of our people are joining the white race. White may seem as sickly and sterile color, but it does not stop their aggressiveness. If all indigenous people join them, that's the end of the our race, the indigenous race. The situation may be nature's way of ridding the indigenous race of its weaklings, starting with individuals who has any peace. We have seen that the meek, mild, and humble people are the most trampled upon because they don't fight back. What a sweet setup for bullies. It doesn't pay to bully the strong and fighting people. One can receive more than one gives. It's the strong who get any peace. It's fear and retribution. That's how the peace destroying bullies of mankind are. They're only peaceful when they're afraid not to be. You don't have to worry about the naturally peaceful people. They don't want trouble. Now we know who are the enemies of peace. They are in control of the, quote, free and unfree governments of the world. They are over rich and overfed. They overpay themselves. They themselves are not necessarily in the governments. They are in control by way of the money market. As long as they're in control, there'll never be peace. Indigenous peoples have approached the tycoon-controlled governments with their grievances. The indigenous are motivated by the highest of motives, peace. The governments are motivated by the basest of motives, profit, by exploitation of people. It's not profitable to grant indigenous peace, for the indigenous people are no threat to the peace of the profiteers. It's the profiteers. It's profitable to grant peace to indigenous peoples only when the indigenous people are a threat to the profiteers. Peace. No sweet words can make governments honor the solemn international treaties they made with indigenous peoples. Why does the Great White Father speak of patronizingly to indigenous people? Because the indigenous people have no bargaining power. The U.S. government even funds a school of medicine men, spiritual advisors, to keep indigenous people from having bargaining power. Said spiritual advisors advise young, spirited indigenous peoples, quote, don't do anything to make the white man mad. He's too strong, end quote. Spiritual advisors do their best to kill the fighting spirit of young indigenous peoples with their voice of doom and pessimism. They urge spiritual ceremonies and to wait for the Creator to do their work for them. So they're taking on the same format as like Christian people are taking.
Correct.
Jesus Christ, pacifying them. One of the positive sides, warrior societies are being revived in various places all over the continent. They are learning ways to obtain bargaining power. Uncle Sam is strong all right, less strong in Canada and Mexico, but they feel just as secure from the indigenous peoples. Is this feeling of security valid? Just as a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, Uncle Sam and these other countries have many weak links, so much so that they are actually at the mercy of the indigenous peoples or any other potential enemy. It's not any secret. Many people in the US are in turmoil over it. To indulge their profits, weaknesses. All the nuclear nations have installations which are actually monsters that can destroy their makers. All the opposition needs to do is to sabotage these plants to start a reign of terror worse than the Inquisition, which took 600 years to destroy 300 million infidels and heretics. This is giving away no secrets, as millions of people in the US are aware of it and are fighting to get all nuclear installations dismantled. If they want a professional opinion, the governments should ask their war departments, quote, what can warrior societies do, end quote. They'll be told the warrior societies can do plenty. Yes, the oppressive governments have to be good to indigenous peoples now, restoring some of the dispossessed land back to the indigenous peoples is the category of being good, so the indigenous peoples can grow their own food, provide their own livelihood, have their own style of proving governments, their own education, justice, housing, etc. These boys and girls are the prospects in the near future. All indigenous peoples have to do is to work at it, to believe or to know. And we'll end there. 219. To believe or to know. That was good. I like the manifesto and everything. Is he saying that so just to be clear, he is good with armed revolution and armed struggle?
That's what he's calling for.
Okay, good. And he's against those people that try to like subdue and mystify the masses. All right.
He's saying it's a colonial structure ran by the monster known as the United States, Canada, and Mexico. That what they do is install spiritual leaders to pacify the masses.
Yeah. And to like glorify the white man, to say they're too big for us. They're too, when they're just a paper tiger.
That's why I also tell you that dismantling other religious bias too, because governments do the same thing with those. The same thing comes with Christianity and all the other religions too, is that they use those as justifications to pacify the masses.
Yeah. Now, Marx did say that, or was it Marx or who else? I forgot who said it. That religion would be a personal matter.
Except for the difference is that they didn't know that the governments would then use religion as their main weapon to justify the pacification of the masses. So that's my only critique to that, is that it's a personal matter, yes, but even Stalin started to realize that what was happening is that these dictatorial religions will start to pacify the masses to make them non-revolutionary.
Yeah. All right, 219. Is it starting to get more into the meats and potatoes, it feels like?
Yeah, it starts out slow, but then it starts to pick up more into the understanding.
Yeah. It's a new revelation for me to say that the Iroquois Confederacy, it's a new revelation for me that they were the first real governmental body internationally, just not recognized. Because why put indigenous and black people in an excellent position over the white man?
Why they erase it. That's actually why they don't like this book being read.
Yep. And that's why they don't like Settlers. You're canceled.
Exactly why they don't like the book Settlers.
Yeah, you're canceled, by the way. Just kidding. I love that. That was great.
Technically, in their eyes, you'd probably be canceled for reading this book.
Probably. I wonder what would happen if I actually. You should read this book. This book, I heard, is making white people feel bad about themselves. You know, white people did it to themselves. We did it to ourselves. You know.
Well, it's why I call it hypocritical that people will claim that they're for land back, but then when you say land back in like the U.S., Canada, or Mexico, they're like, no, I'm not talking about that land back. But they'll be like, land back for the Palestinians. So they're just special pleading one case while the other one isn't important enough to them because it affects them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, does anybody have anything else to say before I close it out? Do you have anything you would like to end with or anything like that?
Just remember that the United States is just a giant paper tiger, and they've convinced us that they're not a paper tiger when in reality they are. And at any point we can rise up and then turn that paper tiger into a flaming paper tiger.
Yeah.
If you get my drift.
Yep, I do. What's up, Doodley?
I was trying to find a way to type this, but yeah, I think I do slightly agree with Mark when it comes to like religion. When it comes to religion being a personal matter, but it stops being a personal matter when it stops like only affecting personal things. Like when it affects the government, when it affects the way that the masses act, it stops being a personal matter.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like, where is religion at when you have your needs met and you have society that wants to develop human beings over profit? You know what I mean? Oh, here comes Finn.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah. What's up, Finn? What were you doing?
Nothing much. I just wanted to add something really quickly.
Sure.
Yeah. I think you communists, you actually brought a really good point in regards how us as white people, I mean, I'm talking to myself as a white person, why we're technically a minority, but then a lot of us use that as an excuse of like, oh, they're trying to get rid of us. Look at us, we're withering away. And it's like, and obviously we start using scapegoats and all that. But the thing is, can you tell me one fucking time in history, please? Anyone in here can tell me one fucking time in history that us white people have not been at war? Because I'm pretty sure that's the fucking reason as to why we're withering away. Because we just can't keep our, we just can't calm ourselves down and stop going to war with people. I mean, why do you think why do you think that a lot of Europe was pretty much a big gigantic puddle of mud, while other civilizations, even way back then, they already had very well developed infrastructures, such as the indigenous people of Turtle Island. Why? Because all of those resources and time and expertise that we could have spent to develop ourselves in regards to our infrastructure and other things. No, we pretty much used all of our human labor power for war, and that's why we're technically a minority in the world. That's why there's like such few of us in the world. Mm-hmm. I guess that's on my only input.
And the other thing too, just real quick, is that we also send black and indigenous people, brown people, and poor white people into the rank and files to go fight the wars for the imperialists, to fight for those white people that are in power, to make sure that they have their domination and hegemony preserved, you know? So we fight their wars for them. Like poor white people and like black and indigenous people fight the wars for them on the front lines and shit. And I would say like even white people are given like sergeant status and shit like that. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah.
And I guess that functions as a way to, decrease BIPOC populations, but at the same time, we just shoot ourselves in the foot by sending the poor white people, because guess what? Poor people are always going to be the majority in a society where there is a ruling class.
Yep. Thank you for that insight. We appreciate that. Anybody else? All right. If no one else has anything to say, I'll go ahead and close out the live. Thank you.
If we don't go live, are you gonna host the live tonight?
I haven't thought about it. Something going? Something? Are you everything okay? But if not, I can.
Yeah, I'll tell you more in Cord, but just a question if you would.
If I would go live to host a live.
If not, I'll ask Finn or someone else. I was just wondering if anyone else was going to host a live.
Okay. Is everything? Oh wait, that's personal stuff. Okay, understandable. Well, let's talk more. I don't have a problem with doing that. I just have to like feed my dog and do a couple things, and then I can go do it. You know.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk off app.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for showing up, and I appreciate that. Love this. All right. Good night.